Yeah. Charles Wong. He's a great guy. He actually let my mother use his pool back in Cold Spring Harbor when she was pregnant with me. So I used to be swimming in the Islanders' former owner's pool before I was born.
Is that why you're an Islanders fan?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm an Islanders fan because I'm from Long Island, and it's one of the only teams from where I'm at that I could actually root for. I mean, yes, New York, but Long Island it's cool, right? You get to root for a team from Long Island. I mean, you don't get to do that. A lot of my friends don't get to do that, but I think it's cool to be able to represent Long Island for a sports team, which, yes, they're the New York Islanders, but their emblem is literally Long Island, so they're a Long Island team. I mean, I don't think anybody's disputing that. The Rangers are basically the rest of New York. The Devils are New Jersey and, parts of New York as well.
My house.
70 Ontario, if anybody wants to know where Josh lives, to send him some love mail. No hate mail, just love mail. I'm not going to let you guys know what the end of that address is, though. Just 70 Ontario. Figure out the rest.
If you type in 70 ONT, then the rest of the address fills in. So.
You never know. I mean, people probably know where you live in terms of city and state. But for the people who don't know, they start looking up 70 ONT. You might get addresses all over.
If you do look it up, I live in the one in Massapequa, though.
There you go. There's two within like a 15-mile radius of each other. So good luck to everyone who's going to end up trying to stalk Josh on this podcast and try to find out exactly where he lives.
Honestly, if you're stalking us, then just make sure you're following our Instagram. We can take a picture.
There you go. So you're allowed to stalk, but we need the following. So at least give us the clout, because we need that in order for you to be able to stalk Josh. Now, I'm not going to give you guys the ability to stalk. I don't want anybody to know where I live in Florida. So you guys want to go and follow Josh around, by all means. But while you guys go and follow Josh around, we're going to follow what's been happening in the NBA world. And it's been a lot. It's been a lot of moves.
I like that. That was nice.
And we'll start off with one that affected my team that I personally wasn't a huge fan of. I mean, the move is interesting because there were so many other moves that happened that weren't major moves, but they were moves that you kind of look as a Cavs fan, you say, why? Right? And that move where we're going to talk about is where they acquired Lonzo Ball from the Chicago Bulls for Isaac Okoro. And I think, when you look at a move like that, you could say, well, I think it's safe to say Lonzo Ball is a better player than Isaac Okoro, but the truth is the guy didn't play for 2 years. He played 70 games over the last 4 years. And you can't really rely on his consistency on the court, especially with what he did over 35 games last season. Wasn't the greatest, but, considering he didn't play for 2 years. Now you look at the other side, Isaac Okoro is a great perimeter defender. He's kind of like our Lou Dort was. And you signed him to an extension last year. You trade him for Lonzo. You lose Ty Jerome. Instead, you sign Sam Merrill to the extension, even though Ty Jerome would have cost you less money. So I think what they should have probably done was
an interesting move.
Have the conversation with Ty Jerome, like, hey, this is what we want to offer you. Before you have that conversation with Merrill, sign. And then at that point, once you have that conversation, I think you would have been able to clearly sign Ty Jerome. You sign Ty Jerome, you keep Isaac Okoro, you tell Lonzo to stay in Chicago, and you tell Sam Merrill to take a hike. That's not what the Cavs did, though. I think they were afraid, and we're probably going to hear from Ty Jerome in the near future about probably the Cavs didn't even try to approach him. That's what I think happened. I think they thought he was going to get a massive contract, which I was shocked to see how little he got. He got $28 million over 3 years. I know I'm saying so little, but considering where some of these contracts have been going of late, you consider that less than what you thought he was going to get, and then you see Sam Merrill get $10 million more. It just didn't make a lot of sense. Now, Lonzo brings you some energy to the court as well. That big baller brand mentality. He's definitely a more than capable player in his prime. He was putting up some good numbers. Is he going to be able to get back there? That's what we're going to have to see. Now, he fills in a need at that backup guard position, which is important, but I don't know how much of an upgrade Lonzo is over Ty Jerome, considering how well Ty Jerome did last season, finished third in the Sixth Man of the Year voting. And then, you go for Lonzo, who played 35 games, shot 37% from the field last season, 34 from three. He did improve from the free throw line, which was his kryptonite early in his career. The guy was shooting like 40%. He doubled that. Yeah. But at a small rate.
I could do.
It's more than we could do, but it's a small rate. He's shooting less than one free throw a game, so that's 80%. That's really not that effective. But
no, for sure.
If he could stay healthy for a full, I don't even want to say 82 games. If he can give us 65 to 70 games in 2025, 26, It could be promising. I mean, he's got to go out there. He's got to be 100% healthy and play like he's trying to win a championship and understand his role. He's no longer a
Yeah.
starting point guard on the team. He's going to be a backup. Not saying he can't ever get back there, but right now in his career, I think it's pretty easy to project that he's going to be a role player, a backup on a team. He's not LaMelo Ball. He's Lonzo Ball. He's getting paid $10 million this season, and he's going to hope that he's going to be able to get a contract for next season. So hopefully he plays hard out there for him to earn a future salary. It's interesting to see that move. I'm not 100% in love with what the Cavs have done so far. But then again, in the past, I've also questioned certain things. It's kind of worked out. We'll see where that ends up playing out. I'm gonna wish. Before I let you go, I'm gonna wish Ty Jerome the best in Memphis. I think he's a great player. I think he's gonna help that team a lot. Definitely think he's underpaid, but hey, listen, that's what he took a couple days into free agency, and at least he doesn't have to worry about where his future is going to end up. He's playing for a good team in Memphis.
He chose his fit for sure, and I think that this move was a win for the Cavs for flexibility reasons, where you have that club option for Lonzo next year, and the money is slightly less. Like, I know we're saying slightly, but it's like $1 million. But for them, I think that the chance of Lonzo being Lonzo for 10 is worth more than Okoro at 11. I know Okoro is a good player, but I think then if it doesn't work out, then you're kind of cut from that salary, whereas you don't have a lingering Okoro, and who knows, maybe they would sign him back, but you never know. But that doesn't usually happen. But so you don't rely on that. But when you look at this in the whole scope, I think that Lonzo's a real candidate to be like a Jazz Chisholm type. I know it's not even the same sport, but just a total injection of energy when he's been working on his body the last few years. Now he really has something to play for. I mean, the number one seed in the East that is looking for something to get them over the hump. I think that that's a real driving factor for him to look to be motivated to accept his role and to be that really good facilitator and defender and hit some shots. I mean, I think it's a fantastic move personally, and I think that if he's hurt or if the fit is weird, you have $10 million plus. You have $10 million extra next year to spend on someone you really like.
Well, let me ask you something. You think at this point Lonzo Ball is better than Ty Jerome?
Yeah, I do, but I think that Ty Jerome, it's good. I think that it's tough to it's tough to give that much money. Well, it's weird because it's tough to give that much money and that many years. I think that they're both a factor to another guard with Garland and Mitchell. I think that because I think Jerome probably wants to start, and I know that he probably saw Bane go out the door, and then when Memphis called, said, "We're going to provide flexibility, and I just want to show the world what I can do." And I think even if he's not truly starting, he'll get way more minutes in Memphis than most of the teams, besides maybe like the Wizards or the Jazz, or what if he was on a low level team. But I think that it's a really good fit for him, and it gives him the years, and it's something he can. There's really no ceiling to what his role could be because he could play right next to Ja and be a starter and play for a long time, or he can be a really important player off the bench. But when you look at the Cavs, I mean, I don't even know which move was first, but if the if the Lonzo move was before, then there's no way he saw him and Lonzo meshing, like being able to play with Mitchell,
Donovan.
and then
It's easy to say this, but here's the truth, right? You have to look at every move. Yes, the Lonzo move
yeah,
happened first. And
yeah,
I wanted to also say, I think a lot of people would disagree with you when you say
it's
Lonzo's
fine.
better than Ty Jerome, including myself. Unfortunately, the truth is Lonzo's played 70 games over the last 4 years. He's averaged 7 points per game last season. Ty
Well,
Jerome
you
helped
didn't
the
you didn't
team.
ask me if about his availability. I mean, that's the
No,
whole,
it's part of your whole
of course,
evaluation. Has to be,
of
right? I mean, if
course,
your availability is less than what it should be, it's going to affect your overall
yeah,
value. Absolutely. Ty Jerome has helped this team. Now, you're going to make these moves simultaneously. If you're going to make the Lonzo move, you know that means Ty Jerome's out the window. Hands down, no questions asked. So it's not like a situation where you trade for Lonzo and then you go and say, "Hey, Ty, you want to continue to come back?" That was absolutely squashed at that point. And it wasn't even like 24 hours later where Ty said, "All right, I'm signing in Memphis." But if you look at the salary distribution, when you give Sam Merrill $38 million And Ty Jerome got $28 million over 3 years. Merrill got $38 over 4 years. And you're getting Lonzo on a 1-year deal. That's a big question mark because here's the truth. I mean, anybody could go down, but he's more likely considering he's got this history.
Sure.
If he goes down and you don't have that backup guard, you're going to have to go make that move now because he's out. That's a big question mark. Forget about that. Let's say he's relatively healthy, but he puts up similar numbers to what he did last season. I mean, I think this is definitely a step back at the backup guard position, considering what Ty did in certain game situations. I mean, he was, and also one thing I will say is I think any team that was considering him, he was going to be a first or second or potentially a third option off the bench at most. I don't think there was any team really considering him as a starter. I mean, could he start in Memphis for a few games? Absolutely. Will he start? It really depends on what they want to do with the backcourt. Is Ja going to be the point guard? Is Ja going to be the 2 guard? That's all going to depend on what they end up doing in Memphis. But Lonzo himself, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do because you get that, when you look at him, you get back and you look at what he did in LA in his early year in Chicago, and also in New Orleans, where he was a pretty solid player. He's averaging 13, 6, and 6 roughly as a starter, healthy. And if he can get back to that caliber of basketball, then it could be worth it. The $10 million on a 1-year deal, I get it. That's probably the biggest thing. After this, it gives you the flexibility.
Yeah.
But he's the type of player that also, if he does have a good year, if he puts up the same numbers Ty Jerome put up last season for the Cavs, this season for the Cavs, if Lonzo does it, he's going to get a way bigger offer than $28 million over 3 years.
The club option. He's going club option too.
There's a club option. There's a club option on there, which I guess they would end up picking up at that point. But then again, you're going to look for an extension at some point or another, whether that's in 2 years or in a year from now. The club option definitely protects the team. I don't know how likely they are to use it. I think it's also for $10 million too. We'll have to see. I mean, it's going to be one of those scenarios where once they get on the court and actually start meshing together, if it's going to work, it's going to work. If not, it won't be a scenario where the Cavs have to feel like they're strapped to keep him. They could probably dish him out and make an improvement to the team. At this point, I think the only thing they really have left to do is acquire a depth big man, maybe another wing player, but they did just add Larry Nance back. So they're probably really looking at that front court, like, how can they improve that? And then they're going to call their offseason the way it is. And it's been all right so far. I'm not going to bash them for the moves that they've made so far, even though I don't necessarily agree with them. They could work out. So it's one of those situations where, you might not love it at first, but it could also be the right moves for this team. One of those types of things. Sam Merrill's a great three-point shooter overall. I don't know if I would have given him $38 million though. So we'll have to see.
But that's the thing. You look at the scheme fit. You don't know Ty Jerome. You look at it where you also don't know if it's just a perfect scheme fit for him, and then he goes somewhere else and it's not as much. Sam Merrill, he probably would make this in Cleveland and have the best chance to have the best career in Cleveland. So I think that's something that was factored in by him too.
Well, I think what the Cavs forgot to do was have a conversation with Ty Jerome. I think from what I read was they believed that Ty Jerome was going to get an astronomical offer that they weren't going to be able to compete with. Them giving Sam Merrill $38 million right around the same time as when I saw that report that they weren't sure that they were going to even be able to move forward with Ty Jerome was because they don't have a lot of flexibility on spending-wise. They could spend under the second apron so long as it's to bring back certain players on their own roster. Sam Merrill was not getting $38 million anyplace else, but the Cavs didn't want to lose another asset that they knew that they were already going to lose, Ty Jerome. So they said, we'll pay him. You might as well. They had to have been under the impression that Ty Jerome was going to get probably around a $50 million offer someplace at least, and that's why they couldn't even consider that option. Now, if they did their due diligence, I think that's where it lacks. That's where I'm disagreeing with what the Cavs did, was they didn't approach Ty Jerome and have a conversation with him about what his future contract should be and if it could work in Cleveland. Because if it did, I think they would have re-signed him, and then they would have kept Okoro, and then they would have probably said, Merrill, see you later. That's what I think would have happened, but they believed that he was going to get a lot. They called Chicago. Lonzo was available. They made the move. Then they ended up re-signing Sam Merrill because they weren't going to obviously bring back Ty Jerome. They decided to bring back their depth three-point shooter. And then, next day you saw Ty Jerome sign for $28 million. So it's interesting, but that's the way the NBA works sometimes. And there's a lot of interesting things that happen in the NBA. Another thing that is interesting, yet not as, I wouldn't say significant, but it's not shocking that SGA got a ton of money. I mean, the world's amount of money He could have gotten more based on what you texted me earlier if he decided to wait another year. But, man, he is a rich, rich man and well-deserved. What were the details of that offer again? It was like 4 years, 2 something. Did we lose you, Josh? Is Josh gone? Josh. Oh, Josh, where are you? Viewers, we have lost Josh for the time being, so I will tell you guys what that contract offer. $285. Yeah, there we go. I can hear you now. All right, that was a little technical difficulties, which happens occasionally. It's
My
not
mic
the end
was
of the
making
world.
mad noise, so I was trying to fix it.
The mics, man. Let me tell you something about these mics. Can't trust a mic. I'll tell you that right now. You can't. Well, I shouldn't be saying that. One of my great friends' name's Mike, but it's a common name, and it's one of those names that you have to sometimes squint real hard, and it's saying, is that guy telling the truth? Not so sure about. But when we're talking about mics in terms of what we're working with here, the unreliability is unpredictable. And so, occasionally you get some technical difficulties. Why don't you tell the whole world the best player on your favorite team? How much did he get? I was just about to say that final number, and then we heard you again.
4 years, $285 million of
That's it?
well-deserved cash.
That's it? $285.
$285 million,
That's it? It seems like pennies on the dollar. What are you going to do with $285 million?
I mean,
can I ask you guys seriously? I want to. If you got someone said, Josh, we love you, man. We love you so much. You've been so great for us. Here's $285 million for the next 4 years. What are you doing with that money?
I mean, there's a lot you could do with that money. I'd buy some houses from my favorite realtor on the other side of this.
Let's go. I'm gonna get that commission, baby. I'm so pumped.
Oh yeah. It's crazy because he still has, before that kicks in, he still has 2 years and $79 million before that, which is chump change compared to what he's making.
So you got 6 years of a long marriage between SGA and the Thunder.
And his bank account.
Well, it's a 6 year player option, right? It is. I believe it is. 6 years a player option, which gives him the flexibility to, sign another extension 4 years into this contract. And I mean, the truth is, in this NBA, you go and get your money. I know that people say, oh, you gotta, take a little less to keep the players on your team and all that. And he already did that. He did that in his prior extension. He got paid a lot of money, well deserved, but he did take less so that they could keep their core. You cannot blame a guy, and I've talked about it a lot, and I believe that in certain situations, if you really are chasing a championship, and we saw it in 2009, 2010 with the Miami Heat, where LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, they all took less to play together. But that was something that they spoke about. They said, this is what we want to do, this is what we're going to do. That's what they ended up doing. Guess what happened after that? They all got their bags after that. They all signed max. I mean, we see LeBron still getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. The other two are retired. But SGA did what he was supposed to do, get his bag. Let the Thunder and Sam Presti, who's the best executive in the 4 sports, I'd say, let him figure out what he's going to do with the rest of the salary, because he's more than capable of getting it done. And I think Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, I think they get the bigger picture. And I think for the sake of the greatness of their careers, they're going to probably want to listen to Sam Presti if he says, this is what we're going to be able to offer you. It's not the max, but it's pretty close to the max. And we'll maybe shed off a year to give you the flexibility of signing another contract when cap goes up in a couple of years, which it always does in the NBA and in the NFL. We see that, but a lot in the NBA. Almost every year it's going up a few million bucks. So I see this happening where SGA is going to get all of the money that he deserves, which he did, and the other guys are going to get paid handsomely well, and the Thunder are still going to be the team that you're going to have to pass through in the Western Conference, hands down. Great team, great player, well-deserved, $285. I wouldn't even know where you start with that type of money. I mean, real estate, investments, so you're going to go buy yourself something nice, maybe a new toy to play with.
Island.
Why not? There's some islands, and, obviously me being in real estate, I get to see some of this stuff, but there's some Caribbean islands off the coast of like the Bahamas and things like that, where you can buy an island for around $500,000. Can you imagine? $500,000 is a lot of money, but $500,000 to buy your own island? I think we can get a few of our friends together, chump in, own our own island, and that's it. And then What we'll
Let's
do
do
is
it.
we'll call Ben and say, Ben, you know, the studio's great, but we got to turn it mobile. We got to turn the Podcast Junkie studio mobile, bring you to the island, and then have us record from the island on the beach, enjoying our pina coladas.
That was the only thing that needed to be done.
And Ben's gonna pick up some shawarma for us on the way. He's gonna hit up this place in Boca. He's gonna pick up the shawarma, get on the plane, come down to the island, and we're gonna have a great time.
I love
There
it.
he
We could
is.
do it like that. We could do it like that, or we could just hit up the CEO of Podcast Junkies and tell them, look, we're starting this year and we need you to transport Ben to this island to be our personal producer.
Well, you started talking,
and
and you saw Ben and I's eyes completely raise up. It's like, it's not a bad idea. I think you're heading in the right
then-
direction.
And then of course it would be a paid relocation.
I mean, he might have to.
Yeah.
He might have to bump up our premium package over here and get us the island package. That's what we're gonna have to sign up for. It's the island package. It's the all-in-one island package. It's gonna be $285 million a year. So we're gonna, have to get a loan from SGA because I don't know how else we're gonna afford it. The island's gonna cost $500,000. This whole
If we borrowed that
relocation is
whole
gonna cost
contract,
$200.
he'd still have the $79 million he's making the next 2 years.
And
so
plus whatever
maybe-
he's already made, and plus whatever he's gonna eventually get in the future, and plus all the bonuses he's had in the playoffs and the finals and all
You know
that
the
stuff.
craziest part? He's gonna be the tail end of 32 years old when that contract ends.
It's insane because at 32 years old, he'll sign another 3-year deal for,
I know it'll be $100
$220
million a year.
Probably at that point. Who knows? It's the way that the salaries are going in the NBA, and that's why they've had to make a lot of adjustments with how teams can get creative with spending. Because back in the day, if you went above your cap, you could only bring back certain players that you have bird
Are they
rights
making-
for. What was
Are they
that?
really making that much money?
Well, I mean, are you talking? Well, if you want to do a quick little
league.
breakdown, the league's making a lot of money because at the end of the day,
Like the teams, I
NBA
guess.
out of the 4 major sports is the most prioritized overseas. So you do have a
That's
huge presence overseas that are watching all these guys playing, and they get a lot of money from that. So regardless of how the ratings might be overall down, the NBA is making a lot of money. They're basically printing their own $100 bills. And that's why they're able to do certain things. And obviously, they're still getting huge marketing deals, and they just signed a huge new agreement for TV rights. So they're pooling in all this money. And if they can get the players to get more money because teams are making more money, then it makes all sense, right? If everybody's making money, then everybody should make money, and so should these players. Even though 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it looked like these guys, an SGA contract 10 years ago would have probably been like 5 years, $125 million, and you would have been like, oh my God, record-breaking deal. And it would have been 5-10 years ago. But now in the NBA, well, I'd say more like 10 years ago. Now in the NBA, you're making more than twice that in a less time span. So it's just shocking that even though the ratings are down, these guys are still getting paid, and that's because they have such a big international presence. So that's what we see in the NBA, but we have a lot more moves that have happened. I mean, there's been a lot of moving parts. I think teams are trying to rebuild. At the same time, they're looking at some of these top-tier teams in the East and in the West, specifically the Thunder, the Cavs, even the Pacers, even though they're not going to have Halliburton. They just got rid of Miles Turner, which we can get into. Well, they didn't get rid of him. He signed a free agent deal. What was that?
I was literally just writing down the document because I forgot to put that in the document.
Well, we can kind of get into that too right now since we're off the bat. And the Pacers, we all know who just went to the finals. Sorry to hear Tyrese Halliburton will be out for the whole season. It's sad to see it, but it's part of the game. The major move out of Indiana, Miles Turner has decided to sign with the Milwaukee Bucks in a move that waives Damian Lillard off the Bucks.
That's an interesting move.
They open up $113 million that they could use in order to go and acquire another player, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to pay Damian Lillard. They still owe Damian Lillard $113 million over the next 4 years.
And they said Damian Lillard was excited about it.
I would be too. Because I'm getting paid. I'm not going to play in 2025, 26, right? Most likely I'm not playing for the whole season. Maybe I find a way to get back, and they're saying that there's ways, but we know what happens, right? You get to the point where it's like, oh, could they come back? And then the brakes are put on saying, let's slow it down a little bit. Now, he is 34 years old. He is on the older side, so it's definitely more of an emphasis for him to get back out there. He's got to rehab before he gets out there. He's got to make sure he's 100% before he hits a basketball court. But this now gives him the freedom to make the decision, first time in his career. And I'm a huge Damian Lillard supporter. I think he's one of the greatest point guards of this generation for the amount of clutch moments he's had. I know that you've had some bad moments on the other side of it, but at the end of the day, when you're a champion within that era,
right now,
it works out, right? So you could say, Dame, whatever the case was, those moments that you had,
we're good,
right? That
we're
three-pointer that you hit against OKC in the first round, or was it the second round in Game 5, where you hit that 35-footer over Paul George, that doesn't happen. You don't know if you're here today. That's the way that the monopoly works, right? One puzzle piece falls down, and the rest of them tumble with it. Or I'm sorry, not puzzle pieces, domino pieces.
You know what I want to say? I want to say that maybe that was when they knew Paul George wasn't it, and Mr. Damian Lillard, it's now our time.
Well, I think it's Damian Lillard's time always, because he's still one of the superstars of the league. He's a 75th anniversary team member, which is a huge accomplishment to have, and he has the freedom. So now what he's going to do with a torn Achilles is go back to Portland, where his family lives. He's going to rehab his injury, and he's going to be close to his family. And in that process, while he's recovering and is with his family and be able to clearly think about where his future will be, he'll have, I don't know, a dozen teams knocking on his door saying, we'll take your services when you're ready to come back. And then he'll be able to evaluate and pick the team he wants. It's the first time, like I mentioned, the first time he's a free agent and gets to make his own decision about where he's going to play next. So for the Bucks, it was, we're not going to have you for most of the season. We still have this guy Giannis. We want to do everything we can to bring him back. There was a connection between Giannis and Miles Turner about them wanting to play together. I'm not sure if the move of getting rid of Lillard to bring in Turner's what Giannis was envisioning, but they get someone who's at least going to play game 1 of the 2025-26 season, is going to be ready for them. $107 million over 4 years. That's what happens when you get your team to the finals. Game 7, you're going to get paid. He'd been with the Pacers his whole career. And he's a great player. I mean, he's a shot blocker who can also hit three-pointers. Very unique combination to see among big men who play at least 30 minutes a game. So, I think it was a well-deserved contract, and I'm not the biggest Miles Turner supporter, but when you've done what you've done, you deserve to get paid. And that's what the Bucks did. They wanted someone who's going to come into the door and at least give them competitive games from day one, and at least maybe give a chance for them to keep Giannis. I mean, that's, I think, the number one thing is they believe that this move should want Giannis to stay in Milwaukee. If that's going to be the case, who knows? I think Giannis is going to take his time to evaluate what the moves are throughout the rest of the NBA, including what's happening in Milwaukee, before he says what he wants to do. If he's going to ask for the trade, Milwaukee's going to almost definitively grant it. It's just going to be a matter about if he asks for it and which team he'd like to go to, because I think Milwaukee's going to want to do right by him. But I think at the end of the day, their number one priority is keep their best player to ever play in that organization to stay in Milwaukee. And if that means bringing in Miles Turner, wonderful. I don't know if they're going to be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. I think they still need to make a couple of moves. They don't really have a starting point guard right now. They did make some smaller moves, Gary Harris, and they brought, who else was it? Gary Harris they brought in. They brought in a couple of other lower-name guys. I think they re-signed a couple of their guys for some small contracts. They lost Brook Lopez. Well, that makes sense when you go and get Miles Turner. But it's definitely a different team now in Milwaukee. It's just a matter about what happens with number 34. Is he going to stay or is he going to go?
Right. I feel like it would be interesting to see if a team like Brooklyn or something tried to get Damian Lillard now, give him a couple $1 million this year, and then take that off of what they do for the next few years and get him on a really. I mean, but then again, it's if he believes in Brooklyn's vision, because this is a real chance to go for a championship, go for winning a division, go for all these things. So it's a really interesting time.
Let's hold the horses on winning the division. He's got the Cavaliers in front of him. Okay, let's not forget about those good.
He's not
Cavs.
on the team. What are you talking about?
I thought you were referring to Giannis and the Bucks.
No, I was referring to the Nets, but if he doesn't believe in them, then he could go anywhere that they can win the division.
I see what you're saying. If he left and he went to a team like, I didn't hear you mention Brooklyn at all.
You're good.
Listen, the Eastern Conference is wide open. This year, especially with the amount of guys that are out. Dame was in the East. Now he's a free agent. He's out. Jason Tatum's out. Looks like the Celtics are rebuilding that team around Jason Tatum, who's going to be out. And then you also have Tyrese Halliburton, who's out for the whole entire season. That leaves the Eastern Conference wide open. Teams that, like the Cavs, the Knicks, Orlando, see an opportunity here to take the next step into making a deep run. But there's going to be other teams that are in the mix that are going to say, if we add Giannis, do we overthrow those 3 teams, let's say, that are going to be on the top of the Eastern Conference? Which preliminary, I'm going to say, are those 3 teams in that order. Cleveland, New York, Orlando will be the 1, 2, 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference next season. But there are other teams that have been making some pretty good moves, I'd say. I mean, Atlanta, I think they see a window here where they can get in there. They make a move and they get Kristaps Porzingis, and they add Nickeil Alexander-Walker for the defensive presence. They have made some good moves overall. Who else was it? They added one more guy. It's not coming to me at this very moment. But Atlanta, I think they're looking at this like, could this be their year to make a run in that Eastern Conference? There's been a lot of moves that have been happening all throughout the NBA. Milwaukee, though, specifically when it comes to wanting to dish out Giannis, obviously that's not their preference. They want to keep him. But if they were to trade him, it seems like an Eastern Conference team will be likely. I think they would prefer to have a Western Conference team knock on their door and Giannis maybe be interested in joining somebody in the West. But it seems
they would love that.
More logically that if Giannis is going to ask for this trade, he's going to ask for a trade to stay in the East. Possibly, and good chance it could be maybe the Knicks, could be the Nets maybe, who have a solid young core who honestly, and I was talking to our good friend Daniel, who's a Nets fan, who, we were discussing, and I said the Nets could be a play-in team this season. I mean, they were almost on the cusp last season. Now with this Eastern Conference being worse off.
Their defense looked really good.
Right, and their defense looked pretty solid last season. I think they... for the short term, I don't know how much of an upgrade Michael Porter is over Cam Johnson. They're probably very similar overall. I think Cam Johnson's a little bit less selfish of a player. Porter is a little bit more of a, I need the ball in my...
Cam Johnson's a better player.
I would say so, too. Now, Cam Johnson's getting paid about $10 million less. Actually, right. $20 million less a year. So that's a big reason why that trade happened with Denver and Brooklyn. Brooklyn obviously also getting a first-round pick in 2032. Was Denver... wanted to open up flexibility on the spending side while also give a defender, Cam Johnson, also a very good defender, on the small forward position to build around Jokic. They dish out Porter. Porter now is in Brooklyn, but at least now on that Brooklyn team, and we all know Michael Porter's not a number 1 option. But on that team, he's going to be acting as a number 1 option at times, especially if Cam Thomas is not on the court. They're going to be playing the 1-2 game going there, but I think they could easily make a play-in spot considering how open this Eastern Conference is. It's just all going to really depend on what Giannis does. If Giannis leaves Milwaukee's going to plummet. They're not going to be a playoff team, probably not even going to be a play-in team because their best players are going to be Miles Turner and a bunch of guys that we can't even recall at this point. If Giannis goes to one of those New York teams, it's especially if he goes to the Knicks. If he goes to the Knicks, that's going to be a big problem for those top-tier teams in the Eastern Conference. He fits a huge need for them, a physical presence who could play in the paint, play alongside Karl Anthony Towns, who could stretch the floor. Jalen Brunson is going to have a field day with getting him the ball. I think it's going to be one of those scenarios where, even as a Cavs fan, you have to look at that and say, that's a really, really good New York Knicks team. See how they end up going. Sure. I actually love, and I will say on a quick side note, I love their hire of Mike Brown as head coach. As a Cavs fan, he had some great runs. He's a defensive-minded coach. I know that you had you had Tom Thibodeau. You had D'Antoni years ago, but you had Tom Thibodeau, who was a defensive-minded coach. You stick with that. Now, the philosophy is going to be a little different, which if the philosophy is better for that group of players and it works out better, well, great for everybody. The Knicks are going to be a better off team. Mike Brown can absolutely open up everybody on that team's capability of bringing out the best on their defense. Even the guys who lack defensive presence, Mike Brown will open that up, and I think that's going to be huge. Now, offensively, he's always been questioned about his ability to get the most out of a team's offense. The team has a bunch of good offensive players. Yeah. They need a bunch of good assistant coaches that are going to be able to help those guys continue to put out some really good offensive basketball, because if you don't continue to work for it, it eventually will get caught up to you. Other NBA teams will start figuring out what's happening, and they'll pass you. So we'll see what ends up happening in that Milwaukee situation with Giannis. There's been a ton of moves. I mean, let's just kind of quickly roll over the last few moves that have happened in the NBA, and then we can give the NBA so long for now and move on. Kristaps Porzingis from Boston to Atlanta. Terrence Mann is also going to Brooklyn in that deal, and George Niang going to Boston. He is currently they're starting either power forward or center, which is absolutely insane to think. DeAndre Ayton was bought out by Portland, signs with the Lakers. Almost everybody knew that was going to happen. And then
2
Jaren
years,
Jackson.
16.6, I think.
What is it?
2 years, 16.6 for Ayton, I think.
I that's roughly where I think the average annual, what they thought was around that 10, 11 million on a 2-year deal. It makes sense. He's getting paid a lot of money regardless of what team he plays for. So him taking that deal with the Lakers only helps them try to get more flexibility. What I will say, the Lakers still need a big man, because if you have Luka as your primary presence on the court, you need a big man that could stretch the court. DeAndre Ayton is the type of center that needs the ball in his hands. So as much as it's a good, young, a versatile center that can get down to the rim pretty quickly, you're going to need someone who's going to at least back him up and give you a good 20 minutes off the bench too. So we'll see if they make a move for another piece in their front court. It won't be Jaren Jackson, though, because he signed a $250 million extension with the Memphis Grizzlies. He's a stud. Yeah. He's a really, really good player. $250 million is almost like crazy to think about. He got $250. SGA got $285, a difference of $35 million. But Jaren Jackson also got 5 years on his deal, too. It's just a matter about the full guarantee. Yeah. It's crazy to think that these guys, Jaren Jackson, I think, is like 26 years old. He's getting $250 million thrown your way before you turn 30 years old. Good for him. He's playing exceptionally well. He's one of those big men. He's honestly, when I look at him, he's like the better version or taller version of Bam, right? Taller by like 1.5 inches, but that 1.5 inches goes long because he's got a lot of length to him. Bam is a great player too. I love Bam, but Jaren Jackson is just, I feel like, a better overall version of Bam. And I think, Memphis has kind of locked up their core for the next few years, building around John and Jaren Jackson.
I feel like with Jaren Jackson, I think that it's really unfortunate that the next day he hurt his foot. But overall, I think that he's just such an incredible player that I feel like a player like that is much more of a rarity than a guy like Ja. Ja's explosive, but now he doesn't even dunk as much as he used to. So I feel like Jaren is the Grizzlies. Ja's cool, but Jaren is the Grizzlies, and yeah.
Wow, big statement. Ja is cool. So. Jaren is the Grizzlies. That is, I can get behind that for the fact that Ja's had his fair share of silly, let's call it silly antics, where you kind of look at him and say, what are you doing, man? You're supposed to be a face of a franchise, one of the best players in the league, and you act up now. We haven't seen anything probably over the last 12 months, but we'll have to see. Jaren Jackson seems like the safer bet to build around. We even saw rumors that maybe Ja could have been on the move. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but if it does, that would be really interesting to see the Memphis Grizzlies move on from Morant. But Jaren Jackson has done everything right. And that's the reason why he kind of deserves to be where he's at right now with that organization, which I think a lot of people, fan base-wise and front office-wise, look at Jaren Jackson as their best player right now. So we'll see how the Grizzlies end up playing out. They got swept in the first round last season by your Thunder. Ja goes down in Game 3, and now they probably won't have Jaren Jackson for the start of the season. Those toe injuries really stink. Darius Garland just had surgery on his. He's going to miss most likely the first month of the season at least. So we'll see how quickly he rehabs and gets back on the court, because his presence is definitely going to be missed for those Grizzlies. A lot of moves happening in the NBA. It's the first couple of weeks of free agency. And with what we've seen in these finals, teams are having to build around a different future, and that's what's happening. So that's why we're seeing all these moves happening and teams figuring out how they're going to compete with the Thunder and with the Cavs and with these top-tier teams in the East and the West. But it's a beautiful day to be an NBA fan. I know the ratings might not be where you want to be as a fan. Not that you really care about the ratings, but when you see all these moves, it shows that there is an emphasis on teams wanting to get better and build for a positive future for their organizations. So if you're an NBA fan, and even if you're a fan of a team that might not necessarily be a good team, you watch, you trust the process, and you see what your team's doing in order to build for a positive future, and you have to start loving those moves, just like those Brooklyn Nets, right? They have been building for a future for a long time. They're still a couple of years away from really being a prominent team in the Eastern Conference. Now, if they make a move like getting Giannis, that jumps up their timeline, but for the sake of being a fan, you go through those times. And you and I both know we've supported our teams through the worst parts of basketball and the best parts of basketball. And it's a beautiful thing overall. We're a Yankee fan. We're a little spoiled when we see a team like the Yankees, and always good, always, basically making the playoffs, always at least a 500 team. But that's not the case always in the NBA. Yeah. And we're seeing that, throughout the league. And it's a nice thing to see, though, these adjustments being made by some of these organizations.
For sure.
Let's wrap up basketball, because there was a big move in the hockey world that we wanted to discuss, and that's Mitch
Yeah.
Marner. And I will say, I wanted to start off by saying, I am sorry if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, because this podcast is probably not going to be the one that you're going to want to watch. We're going to bash that organization because for the last few years, I don't know what the heck has been going on in Toronto. Frankly, they built a team 4 years ago or 5 years ago that was supposed to compete for deep runs and hopefully, for their sake, win its Stanley Cup. They got nowhere close to a deep playoff run. All those players that they got over the last 4 to 5 years are now starting to leave. Mitch Marner was one of those guys, probably the biggest part of their whole entire organization. Now he's going to the Vegas Golden Knights in a deal that sends the great, and I'm going to give him the great because he's part of this deal for whatever reason, Nicholas Roy, who, as a Maple Leafs fan, you have to appreciate when you get a player that's not nearly on the level of the player you're getting this player, and he comes in and says, this team has the right mindset, we're going to go win a championship.
Yeah.
Respect to Nicholas Roy. But when you look at this whole scheme
sure.
of what's happening in Toronto, a city that's built on hockey, and they're just not putting out what they should be for their fans. And it's disappointing. Yeah. It really is, because, as an Islanders fan, and you always can refer some way, somehow to whatever you're talking about in regards to the sports world, we lost one of our best players a few years ago to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it was a really tough pill for Islanders fans to swallow when that player, and I don't even want to mention his name, promised the Islanders that he was going to stay long-term, help this Long Island team win a championship. Didn't fulfill that promise, didn't keep that promise, and he went to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And everybody wished him so poorly from Islanders fan base. They said, get out of here. We don't want to see you ever again. And the New York Islanders haunted the Toronto Maple Leafs so badly that they had to dismember their whole entire team after 4 years. That's what you get.
It's really more Mitch Marner is an incredible player, and you could have argued that he's more important to build around than Matthews or Nylander because of the way he facilitates and the way he can play with more other players. And you look at that roster, and Nicholas was a champion. Like, you can't say that about many players on the roster. So you got someone with playoff experience who's a decent playoff player. Don't get me wrong. I would, in regular terms, I wouldn't do that trade. But to get a guy who's done it, who knows what work ethic it takes to go play along, to go put it next to stars, they extend eyes. I think that they just, when they could have traded Marner in the offseason, but they actually made, like you said, they haven't really come close. And I think this was honestly.
Well, are you referring to last offseason?
Like in trade deadline, like they could have traded him, but they got the.
I want to pause you for a second. They couldn't trade him, and I'll tell you why they couldn't trade him. He did not want to work. He had a no trade clause and refused a trade. He refused to renegotiate a contract at the deadline with the Maple Leafs, who wanted to bring him back. He said no, and he said, I'm not exercising my no-trade clause, so I'm going to stay in Toronto until the end of the season and figure out where I want to go after that. The Maple Leafs had a trade lined up with the Carolina Hurricanes for Mikko Rantanen, who ended up getting traded to the... Remind us where he got traded again, Josh?
Carolina, but then he got traded again to Dallas.
Right. He got traded to Dallas. The Toronto Maple Leafs were on that, and they were going to trade Marner for Rantanen, and he said no. So he kind of put the pause on the team and said, it's not happening. I'm going to stay in Toronto, and I'm going to figure out what's best for me in free agency. So he became a free agent, and then obviously they worked out a sign-and trade to send him to Vegas Golden Knights. And he got paid, I think it was $12 million average annual over 8 years, so he's getting like $96 million bucks. And in hockey terms, that's huge. I know we were just talking about SGA getting $285, but $96 million in hockey is a big contract for a 28-year-old. But that's the reason why they couldn't move him in the trade deadlines, because he didn't want to go anywhere. He did not give the Maple Leafs that option of saying, you want to move me? You can go ahead and go and try and move me. He said, absolutely not. I'm going to stay in Toronto for the remainder of the season, figure out what happens now, and then when I hit a free agency, I'll figure out where I want to go at that point.
Yeah. I think you look at it's crazy because I actually didn't even know about all that. And I think that Mikko would have been a crazy fit next to Matthews and Nylander, but I don't think that it would have been I don't think they would have been that much better as a team because I think that they would have had a bunch of big bodies that can shoot, but no one really to facilitate them. I mean, we saw what Rantanen did in the playoffs, and I think that showed that he had value in Dallas much more than Carolina. And Colorado, he was perfect next to McKinnon. So it's crazy. And I did not know that he blocked the trade to Carolina, but I'm happy about it because I don't like Carolina and I don't want to see them get a guy like that. And I'm sure he would have made them, if that's the story, I'm sure he would have made them sign the extension right there on the spot too for Marner. So
It makes sense. Speaking of Austin Matthews, though, another former Toronto Maple Leaf who left that organization for a better
Matthews
future.
Austin Matthews is still on the. Wait, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry, Austin Matthews on the. Well, he was signed in 2016. He was drafted by them. I thought he was moved and then came back. Am I getting that wrong with Austin Matthews?
Yeah, I mean when he might have there might have been something when because he got a 4-year, $53 million. So before last year, there could have been some talks about it, but he ended up staying, and that's a crazy contract. He was 26 at the time, for age 27 season, so he's going to be a free agent again in 3 years. So
I
he
see.
did not leave.
That's what it is. Good thing I have you to correct my hockey imperfections, and somehow, some way, I'm correcting your hockey imperfections too.
Yeah, no, that was good.
But sometimes you got to do a little research. Austin Matthews, for some reason, I thought there was a time he played, and I don't know why this came into my head, but I thought for a moment he played for the Tampa Bay Lightning. That is absolutely not true. He did not play for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He actually lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the playoffs a few years ago when Tampa was making their runs. I think that's what I was referring to because that was when he was prime, best player on his team. And I mean, he still kind of is the best player on his team, but at that point, it was Austin Matthews leading this Maple Leafs team that was supposed to get to the glory days of winning some Stanley Cup Finals, and they didn't. They lost twice to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and so that's what happens when you get a team that's actually trying to win versus a team that's trying to stack stars together and figuring it out afterwards. That's what the Maple Leafs did, and it did not turn out well for them. And now they're in a situation of rebuild. And, Mitch Marner's heading to Vegas on a good team where he's going to play some very important minutes on that ice. And over the next 8 years, I could see Golden State, and I said Golden State one more time, but the Vegas Golden Knights, it's confusing when you get Vegas Golden State, similar areas, the western part of the United States. But what I was getting to was the fact that I think you'll see a couple of championships coming out of Vegas for the Golden Knights with this type of move. This puts them in a position where they're going to be able to compete for a long time, at least for the next 5 to 6 years, and potentially win 1 or 2 championships.
It's definitely good to have a guy who's on an 8-year deal that was playing on a 1-year deal that is now happy and can now just focus on the game and be fully a part of it and look like a stockbroker from the Wolf of Wall Street in the office.
Well, it's a good move for him. Not sure if it was a great move for the Maple Leafs, but the Maple Leafs, man, that's an organization that needs to do a lot of soul searching. I say that a lot with some of these teams. They need to figure out what's happening up in the northern part of the hockey world and see if they can get back to the relevancy because those fans are probably kicking themselves right now, figuring out what's happening with their hockey team. I just looked up at the clock. We don't have a lot of time here, and I really wanted to get into an NFL trade that did just happen recently, too, that really, honestly, is a head-scratcher for me. Because when you see Jalen Ramsey getting traded from the Miami Dolphins, you automatically think, wow, whoever's getting Jalen Ramsey is clearly an improved team now. And you thought that when you saw Jalen Ramsey getting traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But when you see what the Pittsburgh Steelers had to give in return, you scratch your head a little bit and you say, was that really what your intention was? So the Dolphins trade Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, a tight end, to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and in return he did have a very good year. In return, the Pittsburgh Steelers shipped off Minkah Fitzpatrick back to Miami, where he started his career, played the first year and a half.
Crazy. And
then ended up getting traded to Pittsburgh earlier on. I don't really know how Pittsburgh is better off. I mean, I guess they got the best player in the trade. Jalen Ramsey is an incredible secondary player, but when you lose someone like Minkah on that defensive front too, it's kind of a wash, I feel like. I mean, you get Jonnu Smith, but Jonnu Smith could have a great year in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you were referring to the breakout he had last season, or you're saying he's going to have a breakout this season with Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator, which he's had a lot of success with in the past. So
Yeah, I was talking about last year, but it's definitely good for him to get back to someone he's had success with before. But I literally think that this move was because of the Aaron Rodgers, because Ramsey's cap hit this year is 5 million versus 15 for Fitzpatrick, and then Ramsey's goes up next year, and Rodgers already said this was going to be his last year. So I think that this is how they're making that whole thing work.
Well, I understand the cap restraints, and the NFL cap restraints are absolutely all over the place, and sometimes you really have to follow the dead caps to see how much a team is going to have to take on if they ended up moving you or if they ended up keeping you, whatever the case may be. You have to also look at it from a point of view of, yes, this is Rodgers' last season. Are they going to really compete at a better level today than they were 48 hours ago when they had Minka? Instead, now they have Jalen Ramsey. I mean, I don't really know how Pittsburgh fans feel about this type of move when you lose the heart and soul of your defense, essentially, for someone who could be an erratic behavioral player. Yes, he's electric, and he's, arguably one of the best cornerbacks of this era. Mm-hmm. It's still something where you have to look at it like, well, now we have a hole where Minka was playing. How do we fill that hole? How do we continue to stay relevant in Aaron Rodgers' final season when we have the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens in front of us, most likely in this division, and we got to figure out a way to, surpass them? I don't know if this move really does that. Yes, they also got a 5th-round pick. Oh, I'm sorry, Pittsburgh sent also a 5th-round pick to Miami, and I guess that was kind of for getting Jonnu Smith.
Yeah,
but
I would think so.
This move is, both teams got good players. There really is the only thing I could think of when I see this move is both teams got good players. They really swapped good players. And if it's a better scheme fit for them of Jalen Ramsey being in the secondary in Pittsburgh while Minka is in the front side in Miami's defense, it's going to have to be seen. Miami has a lot of question marks itself as a franchise and where they stand in that division. Their secondary took a huge hit. Let's not forget that they let Javon Holland walk out, and he signed with the Giants. So that secondary is really lacking in Miami. I don't really know how they feel organizational-wise about what kind of team they have over there. Now that Ramsey's gone, they bring in Fitzpatrick. Are they really going to compete for, a playoff appearance in that AFC East with the Bills in front of them? And, even the Patriots could be a team that makes noise. Drake May in his second season, I think there's going to be a lot of huge positivity coming from him. So we'll have to really see how this move plays out. I'd like to see where your head's at more. I mean, do you really think Pittsburgh won this trade, or you think Miami kind of got the better end of this with a move like getting Minka?
No, I think that it was they got themselves in this crazy situation with Rodgers, and then because Rodgers was dragging his feet on actually getting there and signing the deal, they couldn't just sit there and do nothing. So they started to make some moves, and then you look at it where they looked at the options that were available in the market, and they traded one of their most valuable assets to get another valuable asset, but clearly not as valuable if they're able to get Jonnu Smith too. And I think overall that I think that this is going to be a trade that we're going to see the winner after. I think that on paper it's perfectly fine, but it doesn't really make sense why either team would do it. But it's just, I guess it's just preference. Maybe they had a little buyer's remorse on trading away Minka, and they wanted to do right by the guy they drafted. But I doubt that that's the case. But I'm just trying to make logic of something where I don't see much logic. And I think that this Rodgers situation, I mean, you're trading 2 years of Minka for 4 years of Ramsey also, even with the money and whatever. I think that both teams will it won't change either of their trajectories, really. I think that the Steelers are always kind of who they are, and then if they get hot at the right time, then who knows what's going to happen with Mike Tomlin leading them. But the Dolphins are kind of meant to be like this directionless. They're kind of like the Marlins, honestly. They're very directionless. They're like the Marlins when they had those 3 outfielders. They really just don't really have a direction. We don't know if we're gonna be good. We don't know if we're not. Like, it's a Miami thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Miami thing, but it's not a South Florida thing because the Panthers are very good. I mean, the Heat have been a pretty prominent organization, but the Dolphins and the Marlins are in that same boat. I completely agree with you they're in a situation where they're figuring out their identity on what kind of team they're going to be, and I think they're going to evaluate how much they're going to get out of Tua as well and see where this goes. This year is going to be a year for them to really evaluate what their talent level is at with what they do currently have. And, Minka definitely is going to help the front end, and Jalen's definitely going to help the back end in the defense in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin, you never can look the other way on him. He's one of the greatest coaches to ever do it. So we'll see what kind of magic Pittsburgh's going to be able to stir up and see if they can make a run in that AFC. Looks like we ran out of time. Matt, I am very sorry. We're not going to be able to get to your question this week, but we will save it and we will use it for next week because you always have some great questions. So we always appreciate you commenting and letting us know what you want to hear. And for everybody else listening, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what you think, what you want to hear us talk about. Don't forget, we love to be told we're crazy. So if you think what our takes are absolutely nuts, and you're like, Harry, what are you talking about, man? Ja Morant is definitely the face of the Memphis Grizzlies. It can't be Jaren Jackson. Let us know. We want to hear these things. We love it. And then we'll obviously spotlight it on our next episode or potentially on a post. Josh, why don't you let our good fans know where they could find us so they could tune in?
Yeah, man. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Keep checking us out on Instagram, too. We see you.
And, of course, let's not forget the most important part of our episode, our famous Yogiisms. This is a new one, Josh, and I'm excited to see what you're going to rate it. It's more of the along the lines of baseball, but here it goes. Yogi said, you don't have to swing hard to hit a home run. If you got the timing, it'll go.
It's another quality 9 because it's a fact. I feel like it's something that that he's just, I don't really, it's funny because I try to picture the context he's in, and I figure he's just standing there talking to himself and whoever will listen, and someone's writing it down. So I always think of it to be a little funny in that way, but it's a fact. It's one of the truer things he said.
Listen, if I was a reporter in the 50s or 60s, I'd be stalking Yogi Berra with a notepad, writing down every single thing that came out of that man's mouth because it's pure gold. And we love it, and we have a ton of Yogiisms, and we're going to continue to bring you guys Yogiisms every single week because they are the best part of this episode, at least in my opinion. But thank you guys again for tuning into this week's episode of Beyond the Score podcast. We look forward to seeing you next week.